Good evening and welcome. Tonight, Lagos State doctors to begin a 3-day warning strike over what they describe as issues relating to their safety and welfare. Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERA passed Federal High Court to order governors to use their security votes and life pensions to fund healthcare facilities. Federal government hands over National Theatre to Central Bank of Nigeria for rehabilitation. And Florida breaks record for daily coronavirus infections with 15,299 new cases. Plus sports stories. Lagos State, the epicenter of the coronavirus in Nigeria, may face a critical challenge from tomorrow as doctors under the aegis of the Medical Guild are set to begin a 3-day warning strike from Monday over issues they say affects their safety and welfare. The chairman of the Guild, Oluwajimi Shodipo, says the strike, which will run from Monday, July 13th, would exempt members working in the state's COVID-19 isolation centers.
After robust deliberations, the council observed that the following were some of the unresolved demands of the Guild. They include wage disparity between federal and Lagos State doctors, which was not being given necessary attention. The issue of COVID-19 hazard allowances and inducement allowances as approved by the federal government, which had not yet been domesticated by Lagos State for her doctors. That the doctors working in the isolation centers were still being owed 2 months allowances, which had not been paid as at the time of the meeting. There were also concerns that they were unceremoniously disengaged without recourse to their welfare. So in view of those challenges, the Representative Council resolved to activate the resolution of the Congress on a 3-day warning strike to commence from 8 a.m. on Monday, 13th of July, till 8 a.m. on Thursday, 16th of July, with the exemption of members working in the COVID-19 isolation centers.
Meanwhile, 56 more COVID-19 patients have been discharged from all treatment centers and facilities in Lagos. A state incident commander, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, confirmed in a statement that all the patients have tested negative for the coronavirus. They are 12 females, 44 males, and 9 foreigners. 25 of them were discharged from the Gbagada Isolation Center, 15 from Luth, 8 from Etiosa, 5 from Agidingbi, and 3 from Onikom. This brings the number of COVID-19 confirmed cases that have been successfully managed and discharged in Lagos to 1,897. Staying with COVID-19 stories, speakers of the 19 northern states have held an emergency meeting in Kaduna State to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the region's economy and find lasting solutions to the rising insecurity and other socio-economic challenges. During the meeting, which lasted over 10 hours, the speakers appealed to the federal government to redouble efforts at protecting lives and property.
It's the maiden meeting of a Northern Speakers Forum since the inauguration of a 9th Assembly in June 2019. Discussions at this meeting centers on the ravaging COVID-19 pandemic, the rising security challenges in the north, high poverty rates among the citizens, Almajiri syndrome, and increasing cases of rape involving minors.
COVID-19 touched the economy of the entire northern Nigeria. We have to start thinking inward, how to generate more money, because we know what happened when there is no crude oil, nobody to buy the crude oil. A lot of states cannot pay even a salary.
Describing the spate of insecurity in the north as very worrisome and capable of destabilizing the entire country if not contained, the The Speaker of the Gombe State House of Assembly, who read out the communique, stressed the need for the federal government to redouble its efforts towards securing the region, just as his counterpart from Zamfara State stressed the need for the federal government to establish more COVID-19 testing centers across all the states and local governments in the country.
We agreed to domesticate the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, VAP, in all the northern states with special cognizance to administration of criminal justice law.
In our own side as members of the State House of Assembly, the measures that we put is as follows. One, we must make a proper legislation in terms of security, such as death penalty to any person who found guilty on mandatory activities. Two, dialogue procedure by the bandit, the vigilante, the civilians, as well as traditional leaders.
Killings by Boko Haram insurgents and bandits in the north have claimed thousands of lives, with many displaced. However, these lawmakers are of the view that all hands must be on deck to find a lasting solution to the security challenges.
The Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule is calling for support from everyone to see to the furnishing and utilization of the State Infectious Disease Diagnosis and Research Center. The foundation for the center was laid in 2018 by former Governor Tanko Almakura and has since been completed, but the state may not be able to equip it as urgently as it is needed. Our correspondent Halima Gayom has a report.
A completed infectious disease diagnosis and research center funded by the Nasarawa state government, waiting to be equipped for adequate use. Built under one roof are sections key for infectious disease control. Laboratories, a research center, an isolation and epidemiological unit are all embedded here. The project, which was initiated before the coronavirus hit the world, is on its way to fill up the inadequacy of facilities to manage the ravaging pandemic and other infectious diseases, but funding appears to be an impediment. A delegation from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, led by the Director General, visits Governor Abdullahi Sule. Impressed with the work done, the NCDC Director General makes an interim commitment.
What we are committing from NCDC is to rapidly develop the molecular lab setup so that we can start testing within that center in the next few weeks. So our commitment really is not a long-term commitment, it's to start immediately to make plans to develop the lab to start testing, support the further development of the Emergency Operations Center.
While the state anticipates the fulfillment of the promise, Governor Sule, alongside his deputy and some of the state health sector key players, inspect the center. The state is opening its arms for support to ensure adequate and effective use of the multi-billion naira project.
The state alone may not be able to equip it at the time we want to equip it. The state will be able to equip it over a long period of time. And that is the reason why, instead of waiting for that long period of time, we are inviting other partners to come in. We invited NCDC. NCDC, in addition, as the DG promised you, is also inviting the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to see if they can support, and also other partners.
Having the center is one aspect and utilization is another, which is more imperative, and that is where the Nasarawa state government is focusing its attention at the moment. Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has asked the Federal High Court in Abuja to order the 36 state governors to use public funds budgeted for security votes and life pensions for former governors to fund healthcare facilities and to address the impact of COVID-19 on Nigerians. The organization is also demanding that governors publish details of spending on COVID-19 funds and donations in their states, insisting Nigerians have a right to know. SERAP said in a statement, which reads in part, that many state governors are spending scarce state resources to pay themselves security votes and their predecessors' life pensions rather than using public funds to effectively respond to COVID-19 by investing in and improving public health care facilities in their states. The organization says only 2 governors, Mr. Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State and Mr. Abdurrahman Abdurazak of Kwara State, responded to its FOI requests. While Governor El-Rufai says that the FOI is inapplicable in Kaduna State, the governor in Kwara State says the information requested by SERAP is protected from disclosure by the FOI. However, no date has been fixed for the hearing of the suit. A major step at reviving the National Arts Theatre Igomu, Lagos, after many years of neglect, has been taken today as the federal government officially hands over the national asset to the Central Bank and the Bankers Committee for rehabilitation. The government is planning to transform and regenerate the facility into a world-class hub with the aim of boosting the vibrant creative industry with revenue generation, talent discovery, and job creation. Our correspondent, Dari Dewu, reports.
The National Theatre sits idly in the heart of Lagos, the architectural masterpiece, a national pride and custodian of the Nigerian cultural heritage, has lost its old glory. Plans to revive the old iconic building has hit the rocks in the past. With privatization on the table, the decision to let go of such monument did not sit well with some stakeholders, so the relic continued to bear its mark of wear and tear with very low revenue generation capacity. But today, history is being made with political leaders, regulators, and key players in the private sector collaborating to see the restoration of the edifice and its 154 hectares of adjoining land assets.
Mr. President has clearly demonstrated that he recognizes that a renovated National Arts Theatre and the complementary facilities that will be created along with it will help in unleashing the creative talents of Nigeria's youths across multiple sectors and in supporting his objective of creating new employment opportunities for Nigerians.
It's a historic moment for us for 2 reasons. Firstly, it marks the restoration of our national heritage. Secondly, it marks the true beginning of the creation of a proper and well-structured creative industry.
For the government, job creation tops the list of gains from the facelift the national asset is about to get. They're targeting the 4 verticals of IT, fashion, film, and music.
This project would not lead to a single job loss. Instead, it will create more.
The host governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, acknowledges the role of President Muhammadu Buhari's support in regenerating the monument.
In the next 18 months, maximum, there are no reviews, there are no contract delays. Maximum 20-22 months, we'll be bringing Mr. President here. And all of us will be walking him around the new reform, revitalized National Arts Theatre and all of the adjoining buildings whilst we are still in government.
A tour around the facility shows the monument still carries its old beauty inside out.
For development and upgrade.
The official landing over of these assets, the National Theatre, has taken place, but the federal government insists that it still holds the key to this relic. But what it means is it's trying to turn this almost dead asset to a gold mine. The federal government and the Bankers Committee believe that with more than 20 billion naira earmarked from the Creative Industry Financing Initiative, this asset will come alive again. Dari Idowu, Channels Television News.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser. or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Here are some of the stories that you sent in. We begin with this video of an accident along Obafemi Awolowo Road in the Kogi area of Lagos. According to our eyewitness, his car was moving on top speed early this morning before ramming into an electricity pole, breaking it in the process. It did not just break the pole fell on the car. On a car on another lane. Drivers of both cars are reportedly badly injured but have been taken to hospital by bystanders, beg your pardon. I do hope they're all right. Our next story is from Henry Ogoli Street along Lasui Sherry in Ojo, still in Lagos. It shows the bad state of road taken over by floods. Residents here have to improvise with a wooden bridge to move around. They want the Lagos state government to look in their direction. A final image tonight is from Jikoyi Phase 4 under Abuja Municipal Area Council in the Federal Capital Territory, blocking the flood path with sack. That's how best residents could stop the erosion taking over their community. Eyewitness wants relevant government agencies to provide lasting solution to this road, especially during the rainy season. Thanks for sending in those stories, and please keep them coming. Police authorities have rescued a United States citizen who was reportedly detained by a suspected fraudster, Chukwuebuka Obiako, in a hotel in Lagos. The suspect reportedly defrauded the U.S. citizen of $48,000 after they met on the internet. He had lured her to Nigeria since February 2019 with a promise to marry her, during which he has also been swindling the American of her pension. The police also arrested 3 suspected fraudsters allegedly involved in the procurement and supply of COVID-19 protective masks online. The suspects, Samson Inebesun, Blessed Jr., Muhammad Zakari, all from Edo State, are said to have fraudulently received several sums of money from their victims from different countries. They're also said to belong to an online scamming syndicate based in Turkey. Items recovered from them include a building worth 20 million naira and cars worth millions of naira. Meanwhile, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the NDLEA in Niger State, has arrested 12 suspected traffickers of banned substances, including cocaine. The agency says all the arrests were made during the lockdown period, but expresses concern over the increasing cases of drug trafficking.
We intercepted these drugs during our routine stop and search, and we discovered that some of the drugs that are seized are drugs you will never believe will ever pass through this place. In fact, to be very frank, some of the drugs we seize, we've never seized any of such drug in Niger State here. For instance, the seizure of cocaine we made during that period was unprecedented. We seized methamphetamine during that period. We seized Loud, that is a brand of cannabis that is very, very strange here, very, very rare, very, very expensive. We also seized it during that period. The whole range of drugs we find in that axis are drugs sent by waybiz. This is so disturbing. We sat down, we look at it. It appears when you have this suspension of domestic flights, it appears that people now resorted into sending goods to Abuja, to Kaduna, to Kano, to Katsina, to different places using waybiz.
To another aspect of crime, for several weeks now, the nation has been treated to different news stories on rape cases. It got so worrisome that it triggered an outrage, which led to protests from several groups and organizations across the country. But what is being done to check this abuse? What should the country be doing? In this next report, our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shoyele, takes a look at some of the legal issues in rape, especially what justice looks like for the victims.
Pain, grief, anguish, regret.
These are just some of the emotions that trail an incident of rape. A few minutes of pleasure for the rapist, but a lifetime of pain for the survivor and their families.
He has been having sex with me for 6 years.
The rate of rape cases reported on a daily basis in recent times has led some people to describe the situation as a pandemic within a pandemic, and there appears to be some justification for this.
If we take into account the statistics that we have seen, given the work that we do in this space, I can tell you that well over 10,000 girls and women on a daily basis are being abused.
The situation is made worse by the fact that most cases of rape are not reported.
Raped and molested the women.
Last month, Nigeria's Inspector General of Police Mohammed Adamu put the total number of reported rape cases nationwide between January and May this year at 717.
Preliminary investigation we carried out.
In response to our inquiries for a breakdown of the figures on a state-by-state basis, the Police Public Relations Officer Frank Kumba says the current figures of reported rape cases across the country are still being collated and updated. But following the outcry generated by the rising cases in the country, especially during the lockdown, some states have come out with their own figures. States like Imo, Yobe, Kano, and Lagos.
We had 136 cases in Lagos in 2019. This year, the figure dropped to 40.
And in 2019 alone, the state secured over 90 convictions of sexual offences. Again, data on the number of cases charged to court and those convicted is very limited. This has been identified as one of the many shortcomings of the country's criminal justice system. Other shortcomings of the system includes the length of time it takes to get justice for the victim.
If you look at the number of reported cases of rape, of sexual abuses, and compare with the number of convictions we have, it's less than 1%.
Rape is evil! Though the offence of rape is punishable by life imprisonment under the country's criminal codes, another legal practitioner believes that the punishment sections needs to be amended. He calls for all states to adopt the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act.
By that particular act, the maximum is life imprisonment and the minimum is 12 years. So whatever the judge does, he cannot give you for rape less than 12 years.
Some other suggestions to curb the menace of rape includes adopting the death penalty, chemical castration, and the naming and shaming of rapists and sexual offenders. While there are divided opinions on these options, there is an urgent need to strengthen the investigation, data, and evidence collection of the police force by setting up more forensic laboratories. There is also a need to have specific time limits for prosecution to aid speedier dispensation of justice for the victim, as well as the establishment and equipping of sexual assault referral centers to provide psychosocial services to survivors. Shola Shuyeli, Channels Television News.
Annual rainfall for the year 2020 has been put at 400 millimeters in the north and 3,000 in the south, and with Sokoto, Katsina, Yobe and Borno states expected to have the least rainfall. According to the 2020 flood prediction, at least 102 local government areas face a high risk of flood this year. To this end, the National Emergency Management Agency is advising that Nigerians residing in flood risk areas be evacuated to mitigate any disaster. Now, our next report looks at the situation in Anambra State.
Going by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency's flood forecast for 2020, 14 local government areas of Anambra State are predicted to be on high risk. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, is aware of this and so making proactive efforts. The Director General of the agency is visiting the state government to chart a course that will avert the impending disaster.
Carrying out public enlightenment campaigns, targeting vulnerable communities to undertake mitigation actions and prepare for the evacuation to safe ground. Desilting river channels and canals, removing all refuse from weeds, water hyacinths, and floods from water channels.
Among these suggestions, evacuation is one the state government finds difficult to adopt.
In the coronavirus pandemic, if we had to evacuate, how do we handle that? And I think it would be nice for the federal government to consider that and probably give some, some guidance or guidelines should that happen, because it's going to be a huge challenge.
Anambra, like a number of other states, was hit by flood in 2012 and again in 2018, after which President Muhammadu Buhari promised intervention in the agricultural sector. That intervention is coming 2 years after, a situation the state government considers worrying. However, they promise to begin distribution.
We're not just going to give to anybody on the road. People who are entitled to get already know they are getting it because they have been registered. They have their slips. So it's coming to collect what you know is due to you.
So far, 36,000 bags are reported to have been sent to the state and about 29,097 bags distributed to farmers in 6 local government areas.
Corruption, another pandemic that needs a cure. Depending on who you ask, the leadership change at the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, means different things. Will Nigeria find a cure to this old virus? The president says yes. But in another 5 months, Transparency International will release its Global Corruption Scorecard. How is Nigeria perceiving its fight against corruption? Tonight, to share insights on the corruption scorecard is Babajide Ogunsanwo, Channels Television's information consultant. You are here again with facts and figures.
Good evening, Amarachi.
Good evening. So what is the biggest challenge in the fight against corruption?
That's a tough question. It perhaps for me will be our preparation to fight corruption. I'd like to share a short story with you. Perhaps my favorite story is the story of David and Goliath. It's in the Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 17, and it's also in the Quran if you look at the Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 250. It talks about David and Goliath. But here's the real lesson in the preparation for his fight. There were 5 things that David knew he required as his tools: God, patience, strong feet, 5 smooth stones, and a sling. As David prepared to fight Goliath, he even knew that he did not require a big armor. So David was clear in his preparation to fight Goliath. The question tonight we should ask ourselves is, how prepared, I'm talking about what tools are we using to fight corruption? As it is, it seems that the government, sadly, is Goliath in this case, and corruption perhaps is. And here is why. If you look at the trends so far, I'd like us to look at our corruption scorecard, looking at what has happened between 1999 and 2019 as we await the new release from Transparency International. And if we focus on that, if we look at our corruption scorecard, you'll find out that when we started the Fourth Republic, our score was 1.6 over 10. That was 20 years ago. It's now 2 decades after. Our score is just 2.6 over 10. And so in 20 years, we've moved only from 1.6 over 10 to 2.6 over 10 as scored by Transparency International. That is scary.
How trustworthy is Transparency International's reports? Because some say that their perception is different from reality. So is there any other reliable indicator to measure corruption?
You know, unfortunately, we cannot be the ones to fight corruption. We cannot be a judge in our own case. Yes, Transparency International is a global agency. People have concerns that it's perception reality. But here's why perception is important. In 1999, when people voted for President Obasanjo, candidate Obasanjo then, he had people that voted, he had 18 million votes. A lot of people don't know him personally, so they voted based on perception. 2007, candidate Umaru Yar'Adua had millions of people, 24 million people voted for him. A lot of those that voted based on perception. In 2011, candidate Jonathan had 22 million people that voted for him. A lot of those, millions don't know President Jonathan, or they didn't know candidate Jonathan personally. So millions vote on perception. In 2015, candidate Buhari had 15 million votes. Many Nigerians don't know him personally, so they voted based on how they perceived him. And so while perception might not always be reality, perception is important because over the world, a lot of great decisions have been made based on perception. And so there's a perception that President Buhari's main focus will be to fight corruption. He's doing that, but he's faced with great challenges based on the reality on ground.
The challenges which you haven't really delved into, but what would you recommend as a tool to fighting corruption?
It's tough. EFCC is meant to be a tool, but let's look at what has happened to the EFCC between 2003, when it was set up, to date. We've seen different leaders. Indeed, from the evidence we have, Ibrahim Magu is the longest serving chairman or acting chairman of the EFCC. Let's take a look at what has happened since 2003. Nur Ribadu left in 2007 based on controversial circumstances. Ibrahim Lamode, controversial circumstances as well. Came back, issues left under controversial circumstances. And so the evidence we have is that the EFCC is meant to be a tool like David's own slings to fight corruption. But the EFCC, every leader has left based on controversial circumstances, and that is the fact.
So why? Is this because we do not have the right perception of corruption, or it is because we're way too afraid to attack it head on?
So our corruption scorecard, as we've seen, is still poor. That is the fact. But the reality is that we've tried a different approach to fighting it. Let's look at what President General Buhari did in 1984 in his drive to fight corruption. Let's take a look at that and you'll be shocked. In 1984, March 1984, there was a decree that all public officials that were found to be corrupt will be jailed. 21 years imprisonment if you are found to be corrupt. And in 1984, if you bought property worth 1 million naira or above anywhere in the world, including Nigeria, 1 million naira property bought by any public official was life imprisonment. 1984. But even that life imprisonment did not stop those that were corrupt. And so the evidence shows that since 1960, across all Independence Day, Democracy Day speeches, there has been the drive to fight corruption. But corruption still is today more of David than Goliath.
Babajide, bottom line, what exactly are you saying? Are we really fighting corruption?
Yes, we are, but in the final analysis, I'd like to share this with you, and I'd like everyone to listen carefully. As said by George Orwell, it says that when citizens elect thieves, impostors to power, they are not victims, but they are accomplices to corruption. And so, by the ballot, Nigerians can fight corruption. But if Nigerians always choose to vote for those that will steal, Nigerians will no longer shout and say they are victims, but accomplices to corruption. George Orwell. And so that is one way to fight corruption by voting for those that can get the job done and those that will not steal the money.
You said a lot in just one line. Thanks again for joining us on the News at 10. Always a pleasure having you here. In other news now, Kogi State Government has inaugurated the interim board members of the State Health Insurance Agency to provide quality healthcare services to people of the state. The State Deputy Governor, Mr. Edward Onoja, says the establishment of the health insurance scheme in the state will drastically reduce out-of-pocket expenditure for healthcare users. He also explains that the initiative is also part of efforts to attain universal health coverage by 2030.
Health is the second thematic area in order of priority in our new direction blueprint. second only to education. We decided to establish Kogi State Health Insurance Agency to drastically reduce out-of-pocket expenditure on health and achieve universal health coverage, health for all, for the citizens of Kogi State as immediate benefits. With this program, more citizens get the healthcare coverage they need at a minimal fraction of the amount they would have needed to pay without health insurance. Healthcare is a central point of human existence, and only a healthy nation can boast of being a wealthy nation.
And now to the arts. It's no longer news that the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly changed a lot of things in everyday life, especially with social interactions. An art review tonight, contemporary artist Yemi Odetayo, in his solo exhibition in Lagos, remembers the times before the new normal.
This solo exhibition by contemporary artist Yemi Odetayo in Lagos has 53 paintings capturing the everyday life by everyday people and what makes them unique.
Shade of Life captures our day-to-day activities, the different things that people around me do, the dynamism in what they do, the vibrant side of it, the gloomy side of it presented for posterity.
In his Shades of Life, he shows social, traditional and cultural themes on his canvas.
I would like to pick on indigenous to Lagos, which is anybody that sees it, you say, okay, this is Eyo, masquerade. The way I see it is that this is something that is peculiar to Lagos. You don't see it anywhere else in Nigeria. So I have looked at it and I presented it through my own eyes.
The exhibition gives viewers a window into the artist's thoughts and his love for color.
Very impressive, the use of colors. And you cannot, from one painting to another, he has so done his research before putting the paint down on the board. You will know it's not just a painting that people will just pick on the street. These are works that have been painstakingly done.
The graduate of the Yaba College of Technology, Lagos, has been painting for over 38 years. The numbers captured on his canvas will make viewers really appreciate when everything was okay, because with the coronavirus pandemic, these everyday scenes are no longer the usual.
The World Health Organization says today marks the highest increase in global coronavirus cases reported since the pandemic began. In its last situation report, the organization says the total number of confirmed cases around the world has risen by 230,370 in the past 24 hours, up from the previous record of 228,102 daily cases on Friday. The biggest jumps were seen in the United States, Brazil, India, and South Africa. Here's a global update. The U.S. state of Florida today reported the biggest surge of coronavirus cases in the U.S., with more than 15,000 new cases in 24 hours as of Sunday. The figures released by the state's health department surpassed the previous record rise of 11,458 new infections on July 4th. On Saturday, the country hit a new daily record with more than 66,528 new COVID-19 cases. In Iran, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said he was ashamed of people not doing something as simple as wearing a mask to curb spread of the coronavirus. The country has seen a second rise in cases daily, with recorded deaths reaching new highs. A further 194 deaths and 2,186 cases were announced on Sunday. And in India, members of the Bachchan megastar family are reported to have contracted the coronavirus. Doctors in Mumbai say 77-year-old Amitabh Bachchan and his son Abhishek have mild symptoms and are stable in hospital. Abhishek's wife, former Miss World, Aishwarya Rai Bachchan, has also tested positive, along with the couple's 8-year-old daughter, and both are at home. Fans have been saying prayers for the family. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro on Sunday spent some time outside the presidential palace in Brasilia, days after testing positive for coronavirus. He posted on Twitter earlier, the collateral effects of the fight against the virus cannot be worse than the virus itself. The country remains the #2 coronavirus hotspot after the United States, with more than 1.84 million confirmed cases and over 71,000 deaths, out of over 3.3 million COVID-19 cases reported in Latin America on Saturday. Finally, in the UK, Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove says he does not think wearing face masks in shops in the country should be made compulsory. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Friday tighter rules on wearing face coverings may be needed to stop a resurgence in COVID-19 infections, and that he would like to see them worn more frequently in shops in England. Britain has Europe's highest coronavirus death toll, with almost 45,000 confirmed deaths. Elsewhere in the world, China's flood control and relief authorities have raised the emergency response to the second highest level in many flood-hit regions across the country and allocated over 300 billion won in funds to assist with relief efforts. A total of 37.89 million people from 27 provinces across the country have been affected by the continuous downpours this year, with 141 dead or missing. Over 2.24 million people have been forced to evacuate, and almost 1.2 million people are in urgent need of living supplies. More than 3.53 million hectares of farmland were also damaged throughout the country. Opposition leaders in Mali are calling for President Ibrahim Keïta to resign after having rejected concessions intended to quell growing unrest in the country. 4 people were killed during street protests on Friday, and there were further clashes on Saturday. The president has dissolved the Constitutional Court, repealing the licenses of its members. He's also suggested that he could agree to rerun some of the disputed parliamentary elections, which is one of the protesters' demands, which was recommended last month by the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS. In sports news, the Nigerian nightmare Kamaru Usman has retained his UFC welterweight title after a dominant win over Jorge Masvidal. Usman defeated Masvidal via unanimous decision 50-45, 50-45, 49-46 in the main event of UFC 251 this morning in Abu Dhabi. Usman's 12 straight wins ties Khabib Nurmagomedov for the longest active winning streak in the UFC. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Usman on his win, saying his victory has lifted the spirits of Nigerians despite the gloom of COVID-19. With the victory, the president says Usman had reminded the world that good things and great people still come out of Nigeria. In the Premier League, Jose Mourinho tasted victory in his first North London derby as Tottenham came from behind to beat Arsenal 2-1 earlier this evening. Toby Alderweireld's 81st minute header claimed a vital 3 points for Spurs' European push in their first encounter with their rivals at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Aston Villa revived their hopes of avoiding relegation from the EPL as 2 goals by Egyptian forward Trezeguet gave them a 2-0 home win over Crystal Palace. Wolves also maintained their push for a place in next season's UEFA Champions League with a comprehensive 3-0 home victory over Everton. The win moves Wolves to 6th on the log with 55 points. And the main news again. Lagos State doctors have prepared to begin a 3-day warning strike over what they have described as issues relating to their safety and welfare starting tomorrow. And the federal government has handed over the National Arts Theatre to the Central Bank of Nigeria for rehabilitation. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night and stay safe.